Shomrabyug.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Michaelandbenjaminspodcast. Welcome back to the tiny room. Of course, it is the digital version of On Shomrabyug, as we are still in isolation. And even though I'm in isolation, I'm joined somewhat digitally and somewhat distantly by my podcast host, who I must say, despite the fact that it is the height of summer and it's sunshiny and beautiful out, looks somewhat pale and wan and has a somewhat sunken pallor to his skin. I wonder what that could be about. I wonder.
I'm going through changes, Michael. I'm going through changes. There's a waifish quality to my walk now, almost as if I was floating upon the air.
That's not good.
There seems to be a very intense, smouldering gaze akin to The Rock in many of
You're
his
a smouldering
films.
gay.
Hey, and proudly wear it. Okay, let's that avoided some nasty litigation in the future.
Theme music for the podcast. We don't actually have anything music.
Very good. Very good, Benjamin. Very good. Benjamin,
Yes.
speaking of smouldering gaze, a lot of people's gaze has been cast onto the Snyder Cut this week.
Oh, bloody Snyder.
That's a good segue.
Schneider. Also known as Disappointment Central. Next stop, Snyder Cut.
I see what you're saying, because it probably won't be good.
Because it probably won't be good, Michael. Can't polish
Benjamin,
a turd.
we kind of brushed over it a bit last week, but there's a lot of more interesting details to come out about this bloody stupid thing. They're saying it might end up being 4 hours.
Why?
4 hours, because apparently there's so much footage that there was 4 hours of footage before he even left the project. Jesus! And if you think about it, think back to the trailers, Ben. Remember there was loads of the trailers were almost 100% footage that didn't end up in the film.
Yeah, that's true.
There was all the stuff about Cyborg's backstory, and we know for a fact that Iris West was cast and filmed scenes for the Flash's backstory, and it's weird. It's bizarre. It's going to be weird and terrible. But look, we'll watch it and buy the action figures.
4 hours.
4 hours, Ben. They're saying
4 hours. Are we doing Are we doing a watch along? We'll have
no. Oh, I suppose we will. Yeah,
we will.
But
we'll have to.
The other thing they haven't said, Ben, is they haven't said it's getting a release as a film.
Oh.
They're just releasing Zack Snyder's Justice League. What if it was a bloody miniseries?
That'd be good, Michael. I'd watch that.
Would it? Yeah.
No.
That'd be more
I
your
wouldn't.
speed.
I wouldn't. No.
I'd
watch 2 episodes and then I'd lose interest and
the
never
Ben
watch the
Colopy
end.
classic.
The Ben Colopy's. A Colopy classic.
Benjamin, which led us to think before the podcast, we were having a little think together.
We were.
I've accidentally posed two Black Panthers too close together on my shelf and it looks weird.
In what sense? Is it like a cat fight?
No, it's just there's 2 identical characters standing beside each other, and the face printing is so good they look like twins. Anyway, sorry, that was a distraction. Benjamin, that led us to think: what other bloody well films might we someday now see if this turns out to be a success?
Yes.
A re-release of.
Well, the one that you bloody touted, Michael, which is just phenomenally upsetting to me as a human being, is bloody David Ayer's Suicide Squad.
Yeah, the Ayer Cut.
The Ayer Cut, which, first of all, Michael, if anything's worse than Justice League, it's probably the Suicide Squad film, which was just a hot mess. A hot mess. I don't know, Michael. I think that opens a huge can of worms. I'm sure Jared Leto will be delighted because he thinks he somehow deserves an Oscar for his performance as the Joker.
There'll be loads of him in it.
There'll be loads of him in it. And, Michael, I have never found anything to be made better by a little bit of extra Jared Leto.
Jared Leto, no.
He
that's
is a poor condiment to add to any sandwich.
Benjamin, what about the Trank cut of Fantastic Four?
What's the Trank cut?
Remember, what's his name? Josh Trank, who directed the Fantastic Four, and then Sony interfered and they reshot most of the film, and they had, what's her name? Kate Mara, is that her name? Yeah. Kate Mara in funny wigs.
Oh God. Then we'll have Amazing Spider-Man 2 re-released.
Amazing Spider-Man 2, the Mark Webb cut.
The Webb cut sounds very, very simply like a special collector's edition of the actual film.
I would like to see Spider-Man 3, the Raimi cut.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is whole can of worm. I'm not certain, Michael, but from my remembrance,
Yes.
David Ayer and Scott Snyder shot a lot of extra
Zack
film.
Snyder.
Zack Snyder. Sorry, who's Scott Schneider?
He's a Batman writer.
Gas. From to my knowledge, they shot quite a bit of extra footage. I'm not certain that Raimi cuts or
No,
web
of
cuts
course not.
have
No,
that
no.
availability.
No, they don't exist.
They don't exist, but I'm sure there'll be a bloody release, a Star Wars cut of some kind.
Oh, yeah.
Surely there'll be a release the solo cut or something like that.
Oh, release the Mitchell and Webb isn't right. Lord and Miller cut
Yeah, do you know what I
of
mean?
Solo. Oh, yeah, that'd be interesting.
I think the real danger here, Michael, is if auteurs, those that fancy themselves auteurs, get a whiff of this, they might kind of start pushing to have their cuts released in a kind of, and I don't know. It's a mess. Look,
It's brilliant,
Michael,
isn't it? It's brilliant.
I think all our worrying here is for naught, because I don't think this is going to be very, very good.
I don't think it's going to be very, very good, Ben, but I think it might be very, very successful.
Yeah, again, we're looking for the Sonic Boom.
Very good. I see you're sticking with that.
Trademarked 2020. And I think they are going for that big time. And I think it could pay off because, Michael, fan men and their money are soon parted.
Very easily parted, Ben. Have you ever seen my tiny room of tat? A fan man and his money are soon be separate. Is the old phrase, the old wives' phrase.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And studios will have no qualms, Michael. Not a qualm amongst them with separating that cash lickety-split.
Benjamin, speaking of studios having no qualms in the pursuit of cash,
nice.
I watched this week, Ben's recommends from last week, I watched the first episode of the bloody new Snowpiercer TV show.
And, Michael?
Well, Ben, I think, first of all, why does it exist? It's very strange. It's a very, very strange thing to exist.
Yes.
You told me last week that there was an all-star cast kind of as well, and I was watching the first episode, and as you said, Demi Moore plays the kind of the train lady.
The go-between.
Yeah. The interesting thing about Demi Moore in this is she looks like and sounds like, and for some reason is credited as Jennifer Connelly. It's a really strange thing. I don't know what she's at, really, to be honest with you.
Damn it. I have white lady blindness.
Oh God, I knew you were going to say that.
Them.
They all look the same.
I can't distinguish them. They all look the same to me. 80s American actresses all look the same to me.
Heavy of eyebrow and dark of hair.
They're all the same. Between that and a series of runway models from the 1980s, I'm just lost in a maze. Sorry, I apologize. That's on me.
That's all right, Benjamin. It's quite amusing. I think it tells you a lot about your psyche where you've gone, pretty sure that's Demi Moore. I'm going to tell Mick.
I have white people blindness. It's a thing.
So anyway, Benjamin, here's the summary, right? Do you remember the film, Ben, Snowpiercer?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's about a bloody train.
Yes.
And at the back of the train are the poor people.
Yes.
Including Billy Elliot.
Yes.
And Captain America.
Yes.
And some others.
Yes.
And they are disinclined to stay there.
Yes.
Because it's no good.
No bueno.
No es bueno, as they say, Ben. And at the front of the train, Ben, there's all the rich people.
Yes.
And they're having a great time. The kids are going to school, they're having a steak, they're probably in a swimming pool, having a grand old time.
Having a great old time.
But Ben, one of the really interesting things about the film Snowpiercer, if you remember the film Snowpiercer.
Yes, the very successful 2011 film Snowpiercer.
Yeah, with Captain America in it. One of the very successful things about that is we are introduced to the world of the train as the tail end passengers work their way through it.
Okay.
So we're like, oh, this is all horrible and grimy. And then we get up to the slightly nicer place. And it's like, oh, wow, there is kind of society. And then as they progress through, they come across schools and then luxuries. You know, it basically takes us on a journey through the strata of society in the form of Captain America doing a rebellion. If you remember.
Yes.
Do you remember the film Snowpiercer?
Yes, I remember the film. Michael.
Yeah, the film Snowpiercer.
It's quite literally a linear journey through a train.
Yeah, exactly. One of the strange things that this film does is it kind of shows us the front and the back of the train simultaneously. So we don't follow that, not simultaneously as in it's happening at exactly the same time, in a TV way, where one scene is set on the back and then the next scene is set in the front luxurious section. Because I think we're to relate to the front people as much as the back people in this series.
Oh no.
Exactly, Ben. You know, and we're supposed to see how everything... So we see some spoiled teens, for example, in the front section. But Ben, I'm just going to tell you, right? Here's where it all, in my opinion, I'm not going to say goes wrong, but where I'm worried about where it's going to go.
Before you continue, does it go a bit off the rails?
Oh, very good. I hope not, because the train would crash and everybody would be killed terribly.
Sorry, couldn't resist.
Oh, very good. No, so Ben, do you remember the film from a few years ago, Snowpiercer?
Yes.
Yeah, where all the poor people lived at the back of the train in horrible conditions of deprivation.
Yes.
And they have been planning for ages to take their opportunity, and when the rich people open the doors, they're going to charge through and all going to kill everyone and fight their way through the train, and they're going to gradually get picked off as they move their way up the train, and there's going to be revelations and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a big moment.
Yeah. So the doors open and they're all ready to attack, and you know it's very tense because they know not everyone's going to survive, and they've been planning it for years.
Yes.
Right? Now, imagine that moment from the film Snowpiercer from a couple of years ago, if you remember.
Yeah.
Imagine that moment, but then just before they all attack, the rich people part of the train said to the Chris Evans Captain America character, Chris Evans, you're the best damn detective on this train, and we need you to come and star in a police procedural.
Boo.
And he went, oh, yeah, all right then.
Boo.
That's exactly what happens, Ben.
What?
That's exactly what happens.
That doesn't make any sense, Michael.
They're about to do the revolution, and they come in, and instead they get the guy, the Chris Evans analog, and they drag him out, and they say, there's been a murder on the train, and you're the best damn detective on the train, and we need you to solve this murder.
That's so stupid.
It's hilarious. I couldn't believe it then. It was like a parody. And then it becomes like any kind of slightly futuristic cop procedural you've seen over the last few years. Like, you remember Continuum or Almost Human, or, you know, any of those kind of near future cop detective. Who killed this man and what's it doing to the fabric of society?
Oh, Jesus.
And that's it, Ben. Someone along the way decided it would be a great idea to do a police procedural set on Snowpiercer. Who sat down and watched Snowpiercer and thought, the only thing that this film is missing is if it was a police procedural?
Is a hard-pressed cop on the end.
It's crazy.
That's mental.
It is. It's absolutely mental. Now, I don't know how procedural it's going to be. I don't know if he's going to solve this. I imagine he's going to focus on this one murder all season. Jesus. But, I mean, if he solves ancillary crimes as well to pad out the episodes...
I will really enjoy if it's a murder a week on the Orient Express.
It's hilarious.
In dystopian Winterville.
Oh, it's absolutely insane, Ben.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But, like, the worst thing about this, Michael, and I'm just...
And bearing in mind you haven't seen it.
Bearing in mind I haven't seen it, and I'm just spitballing here. The worst thing about this is you can't even have the cool outside on the roof of the train moments that are so important in train heists and things like that. Because they can't step outside, Michael, because they'll freeze to bloody death.
It's too cold.
But what I'm guessing is, Michael, there are special suits of some kind that people can wear to maintain the train. And at some point, our hero, our protagonist, our detective extraordinaire will find himself in a bloody suit.
He's the only goddamn cop on this train.
He's the only goddamn cop on this train. Oh, man.
Yeah,
it's awful.
It's pretty bizarre, I have to say. I mean, the moment of the twist, because I was watching it going, why? What is the point of this? It's the same, but cheaper. Like, it's the same setup. They're all getting ready and, like, they're preparing their shanks and, you know, they're getting fewer food rations and there's a motley bunch of weirdos. I'm like, what? And then they come and get him, Ben, and they tell him, you got to star in a police procedural. And he's like, yeah, I'll solve this, but only if you give me some demands.
The next best part of this that I'm predicting, Michael, because you said there's a motley crew of oddballs, is that there's going to be a moment where he's like, I'm going to need my crew.
Yeah, exactly.
And he has to go back and convince him, and it'll be, you son of a bitch, I mean.
Yeah, it's like, I need the little girl who looks after the rats. And I need
she's got rat powers.
Yeah, I need the old lady who speaks Spanish, because she's the only one on this damn train who speaks Spanish.
You're the best damn bilingual on this train.
Oh, fucking hell, Ben, I couldn't believe it. So I'm going to continue watching that just out of morbid curiosity. Because it's absolutely
That's so
fucking
bizarre,
batshit
Michael.
insane.
I could not have predicted that. Why would Demi Moore put herself in a weekly procedural?
Well, she didn't, Ben, you see. It's Jennifer Connelly. That's the gag. Benjamin.
I leaned into it.
Yeah. Benjamin, also back this week, which was good news, is my favourite TV show and yours. Marvel's The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, Michael, as always, I feel like I have to point out, and you know bloody damn well, Michael.
Yeah.
Because you're the best damn podcast host on this podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
That I don't like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think it's a hot, wet garbage fire.
A wet fire?
A hot, wet garbage fire,
Michael. Go out, Ben, if it was wet.
No, a hot, wet garbage fire, Michael. It's just a steaming pile of smelly rubbish that is occasionally smouldering and spits off things. It's awful.
I'm smouldering.
Yes, I'm very turned on this side.
Very good. Benjamin, yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's fine. It's like attractive people doing a flip and doing a kick and fighting robots and whatnot.
CW with superpowers.
In the past. No, the CW usually has superpowers.
Oh, yeah. CW with Marvel superpowers.
Yeah, there's some indication, Ben, that it's going to tie into the cinematic universe a bit more now, which makes sense because they've time traveled back to the 30s, Ben.
Oh,
and because they've time traveled back to the 30s. Well, that's a good thing, Ben, because now they don't have to worry about where the movies are going to go and how they can keep up with them without knowing the scripts.
Michael, time travel doesn't work, Michael.
It does, Ben. Remember Avengers Infinity Endgame?
No.
It was great.
No.
It was great.
No.
It was very good. So yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's very attractive people doing a kick and doing a punch. So
terrible.
It's very good.
It's terrible. I haven't even seen it and I know it's terrible.
That's literally all I have for you, Ben. I also watched quite a bit of The Last Dance.
I have to watch this. My brother has really impressed upon me to watch it. But Michael, when I heard that he does not touch on his frankly stellar turn as Michael Jordan in Space Jam, I really lost interest.
This is really the only reason we would be involved, isn't it, Ben?
Yes, they have neither interviewed Bugs Bunny nor Bill Murray, so I'm out.
Or Lola Bunny, Ben, your personal favourite.
Or Lola Bunny, hashtag formative. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm not interested, Michael. I'm just not interested.
Ben, I watched the first episode. It was spectacularly interesting and I was engrossed by it. And then I watched the second episode and I went, I actually don't care about basketball. And I stopped watching.
Oh no!
I
still don't care about basketball.
did the Ben Cullopy Classic. I watched 2 episodes and now I've given up.
2 and done.
So Snowpiercer, though. Snowpiercer is my highlight of the week. Now I can't wait to see what next week's case of the week is.
The best damn cop on this train.
It's amazing. Anyway, Ben, that's all we have this week, so let's wrap it up.
Yes, bloody feck all news, Michael. Yes,
Benjamin.
I've been watching things as well.
Oh, very good.
And what I've been watching, Michael, is What We Do in the Shadows. What We Do in the Shadows. But
what you and I do in the shadows?
No, that's for us to know and for everybody else to never find out.
Yeah, Schomburg.com. There's a live cam.
Schomburg.com is the, it's basically our version of OnlyFans. It's pretty weird. You can just give us a small donation every month. And all your dreams will not come true.
Yeah. Nightmares, Ben.
No, Michael, I've been watching bloody What We Do in the Shadows. Not the movie, Michael.
Which is quite good.
The FX, the movie is bloody excellent, Michael. And I've been watching the FX adaptation, What We Do in the Shadows, starring bloody... the only name of note that I'm fully aware of would be Mr. Matt Berry.
Oh, Matt Berry.
Yeah. Matt Berry, who talks like this.
Oh, that's better, yeah.
It's that guy. Now, you listen here. He's amazing. People might know him from the IT crowd. Michael, it's the exact same setup. It's 3 vampires living in a gap, but this time there's a lady vampire.
A lady vampire? How progressive.
A lady vampire. So this one is set on 3 roommates. We have Laszlo, Count Laszlo, who is Matt Berry.
Mm-hmm.
We have Nandor the Relentless, who is the oldest of the 3 vampires and a former kind of Turkish Arabian warlord.
Oh, good.
And we have Nadja, the good lady wife of Count Laszlo. And we also have a new energy vampire, Colin Robinson, who's a modern vampire. He's an energy vampire. He lives with them as well. And Michael, it's probably
Go on.
one of the funniest TV shows I have ever watched.
Even funnier than Snowpiercer.
Even funnier than Snowpiercer with its wacky case of the week procedural nature. It's so funny, Michael.
Go on.
It, in every sense, takes everything that was great about What We Do in the Shadows and pushes it to 11, and it never spoils.
Delicious.
It's just bloody tossing great.
And Ben, they are different vampires, right?
They are different vampires.
Good. It's not a recast situation.
No. But Michael, let me give you the best news of all, Michael.
Go on.
Episode 7 of season 1, Michael,
Yes.
has one of the best vampire collections I have ever seen.
I'm familiar with this scene, Ben.
Whereupon they get many of the famous actors who played vampires throughout many of the kind of benchmark vampire films in history, and they bloody stick them in a room together as a council of vampires. Michael, the joy on my face.
Who's in it,
joy
Ben?
on my face when this came on. There's a bloody Tildy Swinton.
What was she a vampire?
From Only Lovers Left Alive, the Jim Jarmusch film.
Okay.
With Mr. Tom Hiddleston.
Yes.
There's only bloody Danny Trejo from Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, very good.
Danny Trejo's in there. Michael, there's the original cast of What We Do in the Shadows. They're on the bloody Council of Vampires.
Good, yeah.
Bloody great. A Jermaine Clement, a Taika Waititi, the third guy whose name I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that fella. Yeah.
That fella. Michael, the Daywalker's bloody there.
Wesley Snipes himself.
Wesley Snipes is there. Wesley Snipes is there, Michael. Yvonne Rachel Wood, who played a vampire in the old True Blood.
Is it Yvonne? I've
there.
always called her Evan.
Oh, I think it is Evan, yeah, now that I say it. But I'm going to say Yvonne because I messed it up now and I'm sticking to it. Michael, it's so bloody enjoyable. Oh, what a show. They're about 30-minute episodes, Michael. They fly by. You will literally zip to it at a fantastic pace. Nothing can contain Matt Berry. I've never seen a man make such a good career out of just being the same person in every bloody show.
Who's
great.
the energy vampire, Ben? I'd like to hear more about him.
Colin Robinson, Michael. And it's a guy called, I'm going to have to find his name. Something Porkra. Mark Porkra. I can't really say his name.
And what do you
properly.
mean he's an energy vampire?
He's an energy vampire, so he can walk in the day, and he subsists on draining people's energy by trapping them in utterly dull
I know a
conversations.
few people like that.
So, for example, don't look at me when you say that, you son of a bitch. So, for example, he'll trap them in the office by the water cooler, and he'll have a conversation where he says, water coolers were made in 1937. And they don't come from where you'd think. And slowly they kind of disappear. And the more energy he sucks out of a room, the more powerful he becomes. He kind of takes on the traditional vampire attributes of like levitation and turning into a bat and stuff like that. The more he drains people's energy. It's very entertaining, Michael. A nice twist.
An interesting
nice
take
twist
on the vampire mythos, Ben.
Yes. So it's very entertaining. Michael, it's very tongue-in-cheek. It's another documentary kind of style. And it should be awful as a generic kind of knockoff of a great movie. It isn't. It's such a wonderful extension.
Is that the
of
link
that
with
universe.
Snowpiercer, Ben?
Yes. It's in that this is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful adaptation. And the Snowpiercer thing is an abomination that should be burnt.
Well, let's not say that yet, Ben. We've only seen one episode. We haven't even seen the Colopy required 2.
Yes, it's the to and through method. We will have to have a look at number 2. But Michael, if it changes to another bloody murder on the train,
so Ben, this is like the Buffy the Vampire series. It's a continuation of the TV show. Or sorry, a continuation of the film.
Wait, it's a continuation of the film, yes, but well, I don't know. I've never seen the.
You've never seen the Buffy the Vampire film? Oh,
I've never seen the
film, Ben.
Never seen the film. It always struck me as like an off-brand porno parody. Yeah. See, I wouldn't be into that.
Well, it's not porn, Ben.
I wouldn't. Oh, well, then I'd even be less
Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, so that got me thinking, Michael, because one of the things that What We Do in the Shadows, both movie and TV series, does very well, Michael, is they parody vampires and kind of that built-up lore around them, and they just mark it out as something very, very silly. What would happen to creatures that were born centuries ago if they didn't really bother adapting?
They'd probably be social misfits.
They'd probably be social misfits and something akin to objects of mockery, Michael. So that got me thinking, Michael, and I decided to do an deep dive on vampire representation in film. Is it an original topic, Michael?
No, God, no.
No. Is it going to break new ground, Michael? No. Is it going to fill the gap where we didn't have a topic for this week? Yes. Will some of our listeners probably learn a little bit? Maybe.
Benjamin, when you say vampire representation in film, are you talking about how we sometimes talk about Irish representation in film or gay representation in film? We're going to analyse how the vampires are treated by the film and how it reflects real vampire culture. Okay, good.
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. Because vampires are real, Michael, as you know. No, well, let's move on. Okay, maybe not vampires representation, but let's say vampire depiction in film and screen. Michael's doing a vampire face here, and it's just spectacular.
I suspect you've just got a screen grab there when you leave.
I tried, but I missed it. It was a shame. There we go. There it is. Stunning. That screen grab is going straight on the pod this evening. I look forward to it. Oh, stunning. Thank you for doing it again. So, in general, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we'll be taking a look at. So, to go back to this, and I suppose what We Do in the Shadows mainly draws on is that Eastern European
I want to suck your blood.
Vampires. I want to suck your blood. That kind of thing. So, first of all, I suppose
welcome to Castle von Draculenstein, Benjamin.
That was pretty solid. That was a pretty solid Christopher Lee 1967.
Did Christopher Lee do an accent in Dracula? Or did he just go, hello?
No. He was
Hello,
I'm
Dracula, I'll suck your blood, you son of a bitch. Have you ever stabbed a man from behind and pushed him off a tower? Because I have. You know.
I have. Well, Peter, that's not the noise they'd make, Peter.
It would be more like this.
bloody grim. A man full of dark secrets.
That's a real Christopher Lee story, man.
Yes, I know. I've seen the interview. It's bloody grim. You can see the fear in Peter Jackson's eyes. It's kind of like, oh, I see. So anyway, Michael, moving on from there.
What are we talking about?
There are many iterations of some kind of energy-sucking entity in supernatural folklore. You've got bloody Hebrew versions of it. There were Mayan versions of it. But the one that kind of evolved into the vampire is Eastern European folklore and Balkan folklore.
Yeah.
And this really reached a fever pitch during the 18th century. There was a period of mass hysteria where many travelers from England were kind of branching out and going on jolly ups around the Europes.
Gap year, they call it.
A gap year. They're going on a gap year. And I think the treatment of vampires is just appalling. They're natives. They have a right to kind of exist, you know? And so it's just really intense. And I think, the stigma attached to these guys who are just living, just shocking, you
went a little bit D4 in the middle there, but still pretty solid gap year. Solid gap year guy.
Anyway,
your new popular character on the podcast, Ben, gap year guy.
So this led to locals kind of, and locals at the time, Michael, in Eastern Europe and the Balkans, in the more financially challenged areas, would not have been as educated, and they would often regale the Englishmen with tales of the undead, the revenants, the Vampyr, as they were commonly known. And they got a bunch of different names as it went along. Striga is a very common one in the Eastern European end of things. And that kind of crosses over with a lot of the Greek vampire versions, which were a name I can't pronounce, but it's pretty interesting. Anyway, this evolved this concept of a night creature that subsists mainly on blood. They rise from the grave in a revenant form, and they subsist. But Michael, one of the key things is they weren't very bloody sexy.
No.
There was no such thing as a sexy vampire. It wasn't a thing. They were bloody corpses that crawled around and usually ate children.
Get them out of here.
No
one wants that.
No good.
That's not sexy.
You wouldn't be slipping your kid off for one of them, Michael, unless you were a bloody odd
Benjamin.
person.
Unless you're on one of the really strange Reddits.
Or on the Shomer Bjorg OnlyFans account.
Gross.
So yeah, and then those tales kind of eventually, I suppose, leached their way into the English psyche, because a lot of English fiction, especially in the 17th and 18th centuries, were colonial tales of barbaric other cultures. You could really knock it up to the other. And
yeah, what would Gap Year Guy say about it?
What would Gap Year Guy say about it? I mean, look, the depiction of these native people, just gross. Just gross. I mean, I was talking...
I love Gap Year Guy.
I was talking to Dad, and Dad was just like, just didn't get it. He just didn't get it. I mean, he sent the £50 anyway, but I was really pissed that he just didn't get it.
That's great. I love Gap Year Guy. Yeah. We're going to get his opinion on a lot of things this episode then, I have to say.
It's kind of scary how quickly all of his opinions are readily available to me. It's pretty worrying. That may be past experience with real people, Michael. I'm not saying...
No, Benjamin, talk about vampires, not Gap Year people.
Okay, sorry, I was getting into my method. Anyway, moving on from there, then this idea of the vampire takes on really whatever you need it to be.
What you want.
For a little while. And I think many people, when they think of vampires, think of the first iteration being bloody Dracula, written by our very own Bram Stoker, Michael. But that's not actually the case. Dracula was written in 1997, and there were...
1997? The year 1997?
1897.
That makes a lot more sense.
Sorry, did I say 1997?
I don't know. There might have been an audio glitch.
Okay.
But I was very confused.
1997. Anyway, what happened was, he wrote that bloody tale.
Yeah.
But really, he's been around for a while. This idea of the aristocratic vampire has been around for a while. And the concept of sexy vampires seems to have been around since way before Dracula. So in 1819, there was a character called Lord Ruthven.
Hello, I am Lord Ruthven, coming to my castle.
Exactly. And the best thing about this is Lord Ruthven was like a vaudeville entertainment kitsch vampire thing.
Oh, sorry. Come to my castle. I want to show you my secret chambers.
Come up and show me your chambers sometime, big fella. Yeah, so... And he would kind of put on peep show-esque displays where he would use his vampiric ability to seduce a young lady.
Oh.
Yeah. Lechy, to say the least. So that was kind of an early iteration of that. And then there was another character who was brought into kind of serialization in certain magazines called Varney the Vampire.
Right, go on, what's he about?
And Varney the Vampire is a very titillating vampire. He kind of has bawdy sexual exploits in a serial magazine every week. And the common folk of England, the again, financially challenged in England, loved him. He was a hugely popular character. A couple of years later came the seminal vampire, Dracula.
Okay. I thought you were talking about the fluid.
No, that would be seminal.
No, it wouldn't.
Would it not? Is it still seminal?
No.
Gas. What a gas.
No, liquid mostly.
What? For more
Maybe it isn't vampires. It just comes out like, and it's a gas. It would make sense because they don't really have like bodily fluids, do they? Do they? The blood, I suppose.
So on this,
go on anyway. Talk about Dracula.
This is the final episode of Michael and Benjamin's podcast. Because there's no way
Dracula's seminal gas.
Can we get that on t-shirts?
I bet you it gets everywhere, Ben.
Oh. Bram Stoker.
Yes.
Who now is kind of known to be just a bit of an odd guy. We all think of Bram Stoker as this very sophisticated writer. Do
we?
Well, it would have been held for a long time that he was this great horror writer. No. He wrote one kind of great book, and everything else is kind of a laudanum-induced fever dream.
Oh, good.
And I suppose one thing you can thank Bram Stoker for is eternally damning the reputation of any Slavic Eastern European-based country as some kind of monstrous vampiric entity. So Dracula is kind of this famous thing, and what he really embodies in Victorian fiction is foreign invasion and xenophobia.
I thought it was fear of sexy strangers.
I mean, it is fear of sexy strangers, but that could also be branded as xenophobia, Michael. You can find that still today, Michael. If you walk around and hear some racist chatter in the streets about various things.
I didn't know that Dracula was a racism thing. I always thought the thing about Dracula was keeping your daughters virginal.
Oh, there's a little bit of that in there too.
By telling them to stay away from that sexy foreigner.
But I suppose an unintended consequence of that, as many fictional works often have, Michael, is that it does spur a kind of anti-foreigner push. And that is something that the novel had an effect on in Victorian society. There was a notable kind of uptake in a little bit of racism against the Slavic
Eastern
immigrants.
European counts.
The Eastern European counts had a real rough time, Michael. They never really recovered. But it did do that. And then, we kind of... It really branded the vampire as this strange, talking, heavy accent kind of aristocrat thing. That was what the vampire was then for the next 100 years or so. Like, Dracula really did a number on the reputation. Not the next 100, but certainly the next 70 years.
Dracula did a number on the reputation of vampires. It was very difficult for vampires to function in society after Dracula.
Michael, I said this was about representation for vampires, and I'm sticking to it.
Stick to it. Benjamin,
yes.
What about the famous film Nosferatu, though? He wasn't very classy and seductive.
No, he's a bloody creep.
He's a little creepy gremlin
so
man.
this came a little bit after Dracula, obviously. It can kind of be seen as the first film depiction of a vampire. And this one, again, just excellent work, Michael. Excellent work there from Michael Leonard.
I can do a vampire hand, Ben. Do you want to see it?
Yeah, go on. Oh, that is a very good vampire. That's a hypnotizing hand, Michael.
Yeah.
Very good.
I've got spindly fingers.
Very, very good.
In college, they called me murder hands, Ben.
Is that not because you can actually murder people with your hands?
Well, I mean, partially.
Yeah, I would have thought it was far more based on that as opposed to a physical deformity. But yes. So anyway, Count Orlok, or Michael's Hand, as he's often known, Count Orlok far more fell in with traditional Eastern European depictions of vampires. Weird,
he's a real uggo.
Distorted uggo. Yeah. Pale, monstrous. The real problem with bloody Dracula was that he was a bloody handsome man, bloody dashing.
So sexy.
Once he'd fed on a little bit of human blood, of course. He wasn't very bloody dashing at the beginning when he was a bit hungry. He was a bit of a decrepit old man. So yeah, this kind of pushes through, and then we see various depictions of monstrous vampires up until, Michael, 1967. So Hammer Horror gets their hands on the rights, B-movies get their hands on it, and we see numerous iterations of Dracula. And in every single one of them, Dracula is just a bad egg. He's just no bueno.
No good. Get out of here, Dracula.
And then, Michael, of all things, in 1967, ABC in America, the television network, premieres a supernatural soap opera called Dark Shadows.
Oh, I'm familiar with it, Ben.
In 1967. And Dark Shadows centers around the life of one Barnabas Collins. And Barnabas Collins is a vampire, but he's a vampire with the soul.
He's Johnny Depp.
He's not Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp was in the 2011 remake. No good. Anyway, bloody Barnabas Collins
is
kind of the first vampire to exhibit torturous qualities. So he very much represents challenging your own nature.
Is that where this comes from?
Yes. Isn't that bizarre?
Barnabas Collins was the first.
Isn't that bizarre?
Barnabas Collins gave us Angel.
Yes.
Edward Cullen.
Yes.
Spike.
Yes.
Even, aspects of Blade.
Isn't that bananas?
That is bananas. That's Bananas Collins.
See, I told you somebody might learn something today, and it was you, Michael.
It was me, Benjamin. Here was I thinking I knew everything there was to know about vampires.
Yes, there you go. I've been researching, been finding, and I've fact checked this in a couple of places, Michael. So it's solid because I knew this was going to bite me in the ass.
And who played him? Demi Moore?
No, a Shakespearean actor. Called Freed. I can't remember. I'll find it now. But anyway, I'm going to keep spinning my wheels here.
That's amazing, Ben. That is actually news to me.
Isn't it?
The whole mopey vampire, woe is me, to sucketh on the blood of the women.
I know.
It all starts with Barnabas Collins.
Boom. Right?
Mind blown, Ben. My mind is blown.
Bloody blown.
Yeah.
Seminal gases galore. Yeah, it's kind of insane. So that then kind of paves the way from 1967, and then enter the
dragon.
Anne Rice.
Oh, Anne Rice. Oh, the inventor of pornography for women.
She pretty much sets the stage for every single strange, bizarre vampire / fiction author who's made it big after that. So we start with Anne Rice. And Anne Rice publishes her first Vampyr novel in 1976.
Is that Interview with the Vampyr?
That's Interview with the Vampyr. Now, what I found interesting about that, Michael, is it was published in 1976. I had always thought it was the 90s, but there you go.
No, that comes from an era when it took books a lot longer to get to screen.
Yeah, apparently.
These days, you haven't even finished writing your book, and the studio executives are there with their cocaine going, I'll give you some cocaine if you finish that book.
Yeah.
I make it into a film.
Yeah, you finish that book there, boy. Will make me some money, some coke money. A lot of those guys are valet parking assistants now.
Good.
But yeah, so anyway, Anne Rice comes along and she enjoys words like throbbing,
yes,
pulsing, crimson, gliding, irresistible, compelled.
Delicious.
And you get a sense of where this is going. So
Kevin Spacey.
This centers around a couple of things, but the main vampire that she kind of creates and adds to this canon is the vampire Lestat.
Yeah, Tom Cruise.
Played by Tom Cruise in the film. And Lestat is a hedonist. And he kind of draws from the very early representations of people like Lord Ruthven and Varney the Vampire. And what I found out, Michael, based on that, because once I realised that, I had to dig into Lord Ruthven a little bit more. Lord Ruthven is roughly based on Lord Byron.
Oh, that prick. I knew everything would come back to Byron. Everything always comes back to Byron.
And there were quite a few, one would almost say, hatchet jobs done to Lord Byron, all centered around vampires. So there's a very famous novel called Dr. Caligari, and it's about a vampire. And that is also based on Lord Byron. Apparently,
Byron coming and stealing your daughters.
Apparently, so successful was he at seducing a lady that many people thought that he was some kind of supernatural being. Now,
yeah, well, look, we've all been there, Ben.
Well, one of us has. But yeah, it's a pretty it's gonna get me in so much trouble. That's gonna get me in so much trouble. But yeah, basically, Lestat is that. That's where the flowing shirt comes from. The kind of groovy shirt thing. He's a mover.
He hasn't got all
his
buttons.
Shaker. Ben. He's a manipulator. And this is where really the homoerotic quality of vampires and the rampant sexuality of vampires does a bloody explosion on the screen. There's
an explosion of seminal gases.
An explosion of seminal gases, Michael. Now, it took us a while to see Anne Rice's one brought to screen, and what we saw in the meantime, Michael, was kind of a return to monstrous form. So, one of the really interesting things that happens in the 80s is, first of all, they turn every single Stephen King novel ever written into a film.
Yes, Christine.
Christine, etc. But the other thing that happens, Michael, is the vampire transitions from a representation of foreign invasion and fear of the foreigner to predatory sexuality and decay of moral values. And the vampire goes through an aesthetic change in that regard, and we kind of take the Count Orlok and the Count Dracula and we mash them together, and the vampire becomes a much more animalistic kind of creature during the 80s period. They are more beast than man in many cases, or they are able to transform into a far more bestial character.
The Lost Boys.
Exactly, Michael. Thank you for bringing me smoothly into that one. So the Lost Boys would kind of be the first representation of that. The Lost Boys is, in every sense, a representation of unchecked youthful hedonism.
Vampireness.
So a gang, a lovely wholesome family, currently going through a divorce. So half a family now is seduced by a bloody vampire coven. Nest. I don't know what's a collection of vampires.
They call it a nest in Supernatural.
They call it a nest in Supernatural. Yeah, I don't know what we'll call it here. But anyway, they move to this town. Kiefer Sutherland rocks along, and he's like, hey, I'm a vampire.
I'm the president or some such.
Comes up with the famous catchphrase, "You're dead meat," which is a great kind of weird thing. And they're kind of sexy vampires. They're good time vampires, but they're also bloody dangerous vampires, Michael.
They're kind of punk kids.
And that became the fear of youth in America. They came to represent that kind of the new youth, the one that didn't respect their mom and pop just because they were their mom and pop. And that's pretty interesting. And then in a kind of reverse of that, you see Salem's Lot, which is an adaptation of a Stephen King film or a Stephen King book into a film, and that represents predatory adulthood on children, where you can't trust the adults.
No good.
And that's kind of it's a classic kind of creep on the kids that Stephen King does. It's weird, and that's what that is. It's not trusting adults anymore, and realizing that adults aren't always necessarily the people who will do right by you. So I mean, there's a real interesting shift from fear of the foreigner to fear of corruption from within. And then, so we move into that. And then, Michael, as a result of that, that kind of aesthetic of the scrunched up vampire face comes from the Lost Boys, which would later become pretty much the linchpin of everything in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That aesthetic is copy and pasted straight across. But what leads us into a transition from dangerous sexuality to desirable sexuality is Anne Rice's novel being adapted in 1994. Interview with a Vampire comes on the screen. They bloody get Mr. Brad Pitt, Mr. Tom Cruise, right up there at the top. And oh boy, does that sweep across the vampire landscape and just reshape how we view those boys.
Antonio Banderas is walking on the ceiling.
Antonio Banderas is walking on the ceiling as the vampire Armand.
Yeah.
And it's just mental, Michael. In a kind of direct combat, then you can see a split between monster vampire and sexy vampire. Monster vampire is represented by movies like From Dusk Till Dawn, and sexy
That's
vampire it's a great vampire movie, Michael. 10 out of 10 would recommend, purely for
Surprise
Salma Hayek
vampires,
alone.
It's in the genre of surprise vampires.
Michael, it might interest you to know, and it will probably fill in a big gap for you. Salma Hayek as a vampire was genuinely a formative experience. I know I make that joke quite a bit, but it informs quite a bit.
I really thought you were going to say there, Ben, Salma Hayek as a vampire was genuinely a vampire. Not a lot of people know that. That is a well-hidden Hollywood Hayek, fact.
Genuine Hollywood vampire. No. But anyway, and then basically the Anne Rice sexy vampire dynamic informs everything after that. We have Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie.
Yeah.
Which then transitions to Buffy the Vampire series. And Michael, that's it.
Yeah.
Then young lady meets sexy male vampire is the trope. And
Sometimes it's sexy female vampire.
Yeah, but I think one of the key differences between those two,
Yes.
and this probably is a qualm in representation, this probably is pretty bad in terms of gender spectrums. The sexy female vampire is usually very sinister and is toying with men to get what she wants, whereas many of the male vampire leads are men with hearts of gold.
Clearly you've never seen the film Underworld with Kate Beckinsale.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I haven't touched on that, so we'll keep going.
You better not touch on bloody Kate Beckinsale in Underworld. I'll get you.
Yeah, I don't know if you would. Kate Beckinsale would look after me in her bloody catsuit. Yeah. So anyway,
yes.
The old Buffy the Vampire Slayer pretty much opens Pandora's box in terms of bloody creepy old men sleeping with sexy young teens when you break it down that way. So what comes as a direct kind of, well, not direct,
the Prince Andrew genre.
Direct is unfair, but basically Stephanie Meyer watches a bit too much of this and she unleashes Twilight onto the world, and Twilight can be looked at the moment where horror fans across the world went, oh, that's the end of vampires aren't cool anymore. They get a little bit defanged, Michael, and it turns out that all vampires are A-okay. They're just trying to get by.
They've got their own society, Ben.
They've got their own society. They're just trying to get by.
Them?
Who are you to judge them? And we see very modern vampires that live in nice log cabins up in Colorado. Or Washington, in Washington. They live in log cabins with nice electronic fireplaces, and they're actually doctors, and they sparkle. And if you're a bloody nasty vampire who drinks blood, you're Michael Sheen in a cavern in Rome. So we can kind of see that. And then, Michael, for some reason, Twilight just starts a brand new vampire craze. And what we get within the space of 5 years is more vampires than you can shake a cross at.
Or a steak.
We have bloody True Blood comes out then from Charlene Harris. And the True Blood is the Sookie Stackhouse novels. Is what they were called.
Sookie.
Sookie. It's just weird.
Sookie's man, Eric.
And then the Vampire Diaries come out after that. Again, based on a series of young teen fiction novels. Basically, it's bizarre. Anne Rice has become the poster girl for women writing weird slash fiction about vampires. All of these series are based on that.
Yeah, Ben, I did a bit of research, and I don't remember where I read or heard this, but I did recently. So this is from a source, but I've forgotten what it was now. You know that in terms of pornography, Ben, men tend to be more visual, whereas women prefer words.
Yes.
And I think it was Google, but I'm not sure who did it. Maybe it was Pornhub, but someone
it's probably
did a like a survey of the top 5 search terms for women's pornography.
Excellent.
And mostly written, mostly prose pornography. And still to this very day, Ben, in the year of 2020, the year of our Lord 2020, the top 5 search terms are still vampire, werewolf, billionaire, pirate.
Weird.
And I've forgotten the last one.
So, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what you're saying is we should definitely write a series of novels about a half werewolf, half vampire, billionaire pirate.
That's already happened. You've essentially described Twilight.
Yeah, that's fair.
You have just described the film Twilight, Ben.
That's very fair. So that was kind of, I suppose, the defanging of the vampire. And probably what comes from that is the vampire as parody, as we know today. Vampires are very often the object of mockery. I think in particular, What We Do in the Shadows is a good representation of that. And I don't have any qualms with that whatsoever. I think it's hilarious. It's really well done, and it's comedy, so you have to allow for that. But funnily enough, they're never the main villain anymore. They're just done.
Well, I think that was Buffy that did that, to be honest. I think Buffy reduced the vampire to the point of parody where in the first... It happens with everything. It happens with every kind of long-running supernatural series where you introduce in the first couple of episodes, oh God, Jesus, there's a vampire. What are we going to do? I hope he's not sexy.
Oh,
and
boy, I don't know if I can stake him if he's sexy.
You pull out all the stops to kill him. But then the nature of serialized storytelling means, for some reason, you have to keep raising the stakes. Oh, 2 vampire puns in one phrase, Ben. So anyway, you have to keep raising the stakes. And then by season 7, you're killing 6 vampires an episode.
Yeah.
And your supporting characters, your frail old man, your old lady who speaks only Spanish, your girl who looks after the rats, they're all killing vampires offhandedly.
You've trained them up, even though you're the slayer and you're supposed to be the only one who can do that. Because you're the only one who can match the speed.
Supernatural has done that as well, Ben. If you remember in season 1, a demon was utterly terrifying.
Yeah.
The concept of a demon. And then by season 15, it's like,
I'm going to kill that
their
one.
sister
that
can
one.
kill that one. And
Sammy,
then the dog
give me the knife,
kills
Sammy.
that one. Yeah. So, it's the serialized storytelling. So, I mean, Buffy the Vampire Slayer had reduced vampires to ridicule by about its 4th season.
Fair.
And then they had the Dracula episode where Dracula was just roundly mocked.
Oh, no.
Have you ever seen the Dracula episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Is it worth a watch?
It's very amusing. They're all kind of bewildered by him. It's like he comes along and he's a real Dracula, and they're like, "Are you really Dracula?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm here to seduce the Slayer." And she's like, "No, really though, are you really Dracula?"
You're really Dracula though.
It's quite good.
Okay, I'll have to watch it.
It's quite funny.
I have to watch that now.
It's quite funny.
But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I think one of the interesting things that the What We Do in the Shadows version does is vampires are still massively powerful. They're just fuckwits in the meantime. They have no concept of how the real world works.
Why wouldn't they be fuckwits, Ben? A lot of people are fuckwits.
Yes, I know, and I'm sure many vampires probably are too. And I mean, like, it's just really interesting from that point of view. I think it can be really dangerous to do the representation that What We Do in the Shadows does. It could be quite insulting to see them as these, because they're all
insulting to who, Ben? Vampires aren't real.
No, I know, no, as in insulting to the I don't know, just Eastern European people in general. I just feel occasionally they can be a little mean spirited. Like, it's just
I don't know, Ben. They've diverged from real depictions of Eastern Europeanness so much now. I would say if you asked an Eastern European, even someone from Transylvania, are you offended by the depictions of Transylvanian vampires? They would laugh.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I'm not insulted by the film Leprechaun.
I am. I have a petition, which I'm going to get you to sign up for this.
We'll do an episode on Leprechaun then, I suppose.
We probably should. Probably should look at something like that.
Probably should get to that.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen.
Benjamin, don't forget to put Kate Beckinsale on the thumbnail.
Yes, I will. Even though we have talked about her for a grand total of 10 seconds.
That's enough to justify it. We can't be accused of clickbaiting.
Anyway, that's it for most of this week, ladies and gentlemen. How do you feel about vampire representation? Do you, as a vampire, find it very, very difficult when you see your race depicted on screen? What are your struggles? Do you have a petition that you'd like us to sign? No, I'm kidding. How do you feel about vampire depiction in pop culture? Were you a huge Anne Rice fan? Were you not a huge Anne Rice fan? Were you a huge Buffet fan? And do you think that Vampire Seminole is a fluid or a gas? Let us know in several different places. You can find us on seomrabeag.com, SEOMORABEAG.com.
That means Tiny Room in Irish.
It does indeed. You can find us on the gram at Seomrabeag with the exact same spelling and meaning. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, hell yeah. Give us a review there just down below, please.
Why do you talk to people on Apple like that then?
I don't know. If you're listening to us on Spotify, how you doing? You alright, hun? And will you please give us a follow and share us in your stories for all your pals. If you have any vampire pals that are struggling with representation, send them this episode. It might perk up their day.
Ben, what sort of review would Gap Year Guy write for us?
I mean, it's fine, but I think a lot of what they talk about is very problematic. I mean, I know a lot of paddies, and they're just not like that. You know, it's just not a realistic representation of who they are as people. It's just problematic, you know. It's really weird. Anyway, I'm off down the battle cruiser, so I'll talk to you later. Bye. So that's probably what he'd say there. And that's it from us, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to leave it on that one. Goodbye.
All right, well, goodbye now.
Bye.
See you next week.